BP shareholder. I came from California. I'm the director of an energy program at a human rights organization called Global Exchange, and I specialize in oil operations. I've written my third book, which I'd like to offer to Mr. Dudley, called Black Tide, the devastating impact of the Gulf oil spill. There's a great deal in it about your predecessor that I think you'll find useful and informative, and I'd very much like to offer it to you. I wrote the book after spending 8 months embedded within those communities in the United States Gulf Coast most directly impacted by the BP oil spill. And I have several questions as a result of that time and that experience about BP's ongoing deep water operations, which you have said at the beginning will be an increasing amount of your portfolio and the safety of those operations. I came here today with a delegation of residents from the United States Gulf Coast who traveled from Louisiana, from Texas, from the most hardest hit communities. These are the people, these are Fisher people, Tracy Coons and her husband Mike, Byron and Claude, Diane Wilson, Fishers who also represent Fishers associations who came on behalf of their membership, their communities most harmed by the disaster, to speak to the shareholders. They had legal proxies to attend. They were, however, denied entrance with those legal proxies, which of course is an illegal action for a publicly owned company to deny access to shareholders and their proxies. They came because they wanted to talk to the board, the executives, they wanted to talk to the shareholders about the ongoing devastation that is still happening in the Gulf. We have livelihoods that are still impacted. We still have oil coating the bottom of the ocean. We still have dispersant coating the bottom of the ocean. We still have waves that roll in and oil rolls in with it. We stick a stick in the sand and there's still oil there. What we don't have at the bottom of the ocean is the life that is supposed to be there. Everything from worms to seahorses, but for many, most importantly, the baby oysters, the baby shrimp that are supposed to reside in the Gulf, that are supposed to provide the livelihoods for communities there, and they're very concerned about 5 years out, six years out, what's going to happen. And we're very concerned about the fact that BP is still fighting with our laws. We have something called the Clean Water Act. Under the Clean Water Act, BP is obligated to pay between $1,000 and $4,300 per barrel of oil spilled. The commissions that you cited at the beginning of this presentation have all concluded that 5 million barrels of oil were spilled, 210 million gallons of oil. To restore the Gulf, to take care of your financial obligations, your legal obligations, that's a $20 billion fee simply for the oil spilled. However, we have heard that in court proceedings, BP is refusing to pay that money or trying to get around paying that money, instead believes that a day rate is more appropriate, a $3 million total fee for what you owe to the Gulf, $3 million versus $20 billion, and that in public and the press they're saying that this is, that you are adhering to your financial obligations, and that's a problem. We also need to be concerned about ongoing operations, not just cleanup, because of course in the documents that BP presented to the United States government prior to beginning the operations of the Macondo well in the Deepwater Horizon, you asserted that you had the capacity, knowledge, know-how, technology to deal with the Deepwater blowout. A Deepwater blowout happened, and Mr. Dudley, your predecessor, then announced shortly thereafter to the world that he didn't really know what to do in the case of a Deepwater blowout, that we were going to apply shallow water technology to the Deepwater blowout. And I don't isolate BP. Chevron didn't know, Exxon didn't know, Shell didn't know, Transocean didn't know, Halliburton, Cameron. But you
Will you come to a question?
Absolutely. You also then asserted that you had the capacity to deal with 300,000 barrels of oil a day spill, when this was only 80,000 barrels a day only, and you didn't have the capacity. So I'd like to know as a question that you had guaranteed your capacity to deal with a Deepwater blowout. You had guaranteed your capacity to deal with 300,000 barrels of oil a day of an oil spill, yet it was very clear that neither of those commitments were something that you actually had the capacity to do. And do we now have, and what are you offering us as a guarantee for the safety of the ongoing deep water operations that you're doing and those operations moving ever deeper. But also because the other Gulf residents couldn't be here and because we're talking about safety, I was brought here with an obligation, and that was by Keith Jones, who is the father of Gordon Jones, who died aboard the Deepwater Horizon. His son was 28 years old, and he asked me to read a brief statement that he submitted. His son, Gordon, died aboard the rig, but you don't want to hear that voice of why his concerns that he was unable to bring.
Antonia,
may I read a paragraph from the father of the son who died aboard the Deepwater Horizon?
Yes, read it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So,
read it!
Keith Jones, his son, was 28 years old when he died aboard the Deepwater Horizon. And one question that he has for the board, because he couldn't be here today, he asked, why was Gordon taken from those who love him so? This was no act of God. This was not a blowout that was inevitable. No. BP, Transocean, and Halliburton could have prevented this blowout. They could have prevented the blowout and still harvested the riches that lay below. They could have carefully and safely completed this well, but to complete the well safely would have taken a little more time and a little more money. And were you, he asks, just too greedy to wait? You had to make more money faster. And if that put those who were on the rig at risk, well, sometimes one has to take a few chances, right? After all, none of you were on that rig. You weren't rolling the dice with the lives of your sons or daughters, but you were rolling the dice with my son's life, and you lost. I would like to know on behalf of his grandsons what you intend to do differently today. Thank you.
let me first say that nothing that we do can bring the 11 lives lost back. And this is an accident that I said has saddened and shocked us all. This is an accident that should not have happened. And we are, as a company, absolutely committed. And I am, and the board is, and everybody are, committed to do everything we possibly can to not make this happen again. You must rest assured of that. The Presidential Commission concluded, as you are rightfully saying, that we have all something to learn from this. We have all something to learn, especially on lots of matters, but including, as you also are saying, on the spill response. And that is also why I believe the moratorium was introduced, to make sure that before activities goes on, that we are all as an industry, because this is, as we've said, it's multi-cause, multi-companies, so it's a whole chain of things that has to work. So we are all prepared to deal with a situation like this in a much better way. But let me turn to Bob to fill you in, especially also a little bit on where we are right now, how things have developed.
Well, I think, Antonia, many of your statements sounded like they were represented for a plaintiff attorney, because I have differences of many of the comments that you made, but we certainly are deeply impacted by the 11 men who died. And we've recognized one of those, and I'm actually going to read out to the group here the names of the 11 people so we can recognize all of them. And let me just do that for a moment from the representatives of Transocean and a company called M.I. Swaco. Gordon Jones is one of those from M.I. Swaco. Jason Anderson, Aaron Dale Burkeen, Donald Clark, Stephen Curtis, Roy Wyatt Kemp, Carl Dale Kleppinger, Blair Manuel, Dewey Rivette, Shane Rocheteau, Adam Weiss. Most of them lived in Mississippi and Louisiana. We're deeply aware of the impact that it's caused on those families, and we have anonymously donated to support the memorial funds for those families. I'm going to turn from that subject to some of your statements about oil. BP does disagree with the amount of oil. There is no study which has confirmed the amount of oil that leaked into the ocean. As you said, as a shareholder, you should be concerned about a number that is too high or a representation of gross negligence which multiplies a fine from 1,100 barrels to